The rain pelted down so hard that Hannah Ashford could barely see the ranch house through the sheets of water cascading from the brim of her ruined hat. But she kept walking because turning back meant death by starvation or worse. Montana Territory stretched endlessly around her in 1877, unforgiving and wild, a place where women alone did not survive long without protection or purpose. Her boots squelched in the mud as she approached the sprawling ranch, its buildings solid and well-maintained despite the storm, smoke rising from the chimney promising warmth she had not felt in days. She had been traveling for 3 weeks since leaving everything behind, her small bag of possessions growing lighter each day as she sold what little she had for food. Until now she had nothing left but the clothes on her back, and a determination that burned fiercer than any Montana winter. The main house loomed before her, 2 stories of timber and stone that spoke of success and permanence, things she had not known since her father died and left her with nothing but debts. She climbed the steps to the covered porch, grateful to escape the rain for a moment, and knocked on the heavy wooden door with a trembling hand. Her stomach cramped with hunger, reminding her that she had eaten only a handful of berries yesterday and nothing today. The door opened, and a man stood before her, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell just past his collar and eyes the color of storm clouds that seemed to assess everything about her in a single glance. "Help you?" His voice was deep, cautious but not unkind, and Hannah noticed he kept one hand near the pistol at his hip. "I need work," she said, forcing her voice to stay steady despite the way her legs shook. "Any work. I can cook, clean, mend clothes, help with animals. I am a hard worker and I will not complain about the labor or the hours." He studied her for a long moment, taking in her soaked dress, the dark circles under her eyes, the way she swayed slightly on her feet. "You look half dead. When did you last eat?" "Yesterday. The day before." "I do not remember exactly." The words came out more honestly than she intended, and she straightened her spine, trying to appear stronger than she felt. "But I am capable. I just need a chance to prove it." "You have family nearby?" he asked, glancing past her as if expecting someone else to appear. "No one. My father passed 2 months ago. I have been traveling since then, looking for honest work." She met his gaze directly, refusing to show the fear that gnawed at her constantly. "I will not be trouble. I just need to survive." The man's expression softened almost imperceptibly, and he stepped back from the doorway. "Come inside before you drown out there. I am Isaac Hendricks, and this is my ranch. We will get you fed, and then we can talk about work." Hannah wanted to cry with relief but held it back, stepping into the warm interior of the house instead. The main room was spacious, with a large fireplace crackling with flames, comfortable furniture that showed use but was well maintained, and the lingering smell of coffee and bread. She stood dripping on the floor, suddenly aware of what a mess she must look, her blonde hair plastered to her face, her dress torn in places from brambles and rough travel. "Wait here," Isaac said, disappearing through a doorway and returning moments later with a towel and a thick blanket. "Dry yourself off. I will bring food." She wrapped herself in the blanket after toweling off her face and hair, the warmth seeping into her bones like a blessing. True to his word, Isaac returned quickly with a plate of bread, cheese, and cold beef, along with a cup of hot coffee that smelled like heaven. Hannah forced herself to eat slowly, though every instinct screamed at her to devour it all immediately. He watched her from a chair across the room, his expression thoughtful. "How old are you?" he asked after she had eaten about half the food. 22, old enough to work hard and smart enough to follow instructions." She took a sip of the coffee, savoring the warmth. "How large is your operation here?" "Large enough to need help," he admitted. I lost my cook 3 weeks ago when she decided to marry a merchant in Madisonville and move to town. Been making do since then, but I am not much good in the kitchen, and my ranch hands complain constantly about my cooking, though they are too polite to say it directly. A hint of amusement touched his features. I also have 5 men working here full-time, and during busy seasons, we hire more. Keeping everyone fed and the house running is more than I can manage while also running the ranch. Hope bloomed in Hannah's chest, bright and almost painful. I can do that. I ran my father's household after my mother died when I was 16. I can cook for large groups, manage supplies, do all the domestic work needed. Isaac leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. It is hard work. The hours are long, especially during roundup and branding season. You would have your own room, meals, and wages. But I need someone reliable, someone who will not run off after a few weeks when the work gets difficult. I have nowhere to run to, Hannah said simply. This would be everything I need. I will not let you down. He studied her for another long moment, and she could see him weighing the decision, considering whether she was truly up to the task. Finally, he nodded. Stay, and I will give you a home, not just work, but a real place to live, to belong. Everyone here is part of something bigger than themselves. If you prove yourself, you will always have a place at Hendricks Ranch. The words hit her harder than she expected, and this time she could not stop the tears that welled in her eyes. Thank you. You will not regret this. We will see, he said, but his tone was gentle. Finish eating, and then I will show you to your room. You look like you need sleep more than anything else right now. Tomorrow will be soon enough to start. Hannah finished the food, every bite tasting better than anything she could remember, and followed Isaac up a set of stairs to the second floor. He led her to a room at the end of the hall, simple but clean, with a real bed, a dresser, a washstand, and a window overlooking the ranch yard. It was more than she had dared hope for. There are extra clothes in the dresser that belonged to my mother, Isaac said, somewhat awkwardly. She passed 5 years ago, but I kept her things. You are welcome to anything that fits. Get some rest. I will wake you for supper if you are not up by then. He left before she could thank him again, closing the door softly behind him. Hannah stood in the center of the room, hardly believing her luck, then collapsed onto the bed, asleep before she could even remove her wet dress. She woke to a soft knock on the door and Isaac's voice calling her name. Disoriented, she sat up, realizing the light outside had changed to the golden glow of evening. How long had she slept? She stumbled to the door and opened it, finding Isaac with another plate of food. Thought you might prefer to eat up here tonight rather than meet everyone while you are still getting your bearings, he said, handing her the plate. Tomorrow will be soon enough for introductions. There are fresh clothes in the dresser and water in the pitcher for washing. Sleep as much as you need. He left again before she could respond, and Hannah realized she had misjudged him in that first moment at the door. He was not just cautious but genuinely kind, the sort of man who noticed when someone needed space and time to recover. She ate the meal, washed as best she could with the water provided, and changed into a simple cotton dress from the dresser that fit reasonably well. Then she returned to bed, falling into a deep, dreamless sleep that her exhausted body desperately needed. Morning came with sunlight streaming through the window and the sounds of men's voices and animals in the yard below. Hannah woke feeling more rested than she had in months, though her muscles ached from the long journey. She dressed carefully in another of the simple dresses, a dark blue one that fit better than the first, and braided her hair back from her face. Taking a deep breath to steady her nerves, she made her way downstairs. The kitchen was at the back of the house, a large room with a massive iron stove, long work tables, shelves stocked with supplies, and windows overlooking a vegetable garden. Isaac stood at the stove, frowning at a pan of what looked like burnt eggs, and did not notice her entrance immediately. "Let me," Hannah said softly, and he turned, relief washing over his features. "Thank God. I cannot seem to make eggs without ruining them." He stepped aside, gesturing to the stove. "The men eat breakfast at 6, dinner at noon, and supper at 7. There are usually 6 of us total, 7 now with you. They eat a lot, but they are not picky." Hannah took over at the stove, salvaging what she could and starting fresh with new eggs, moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this countless times before. She found bread, butter, ham, and potatoes, quickly assembling a proper breakfast while Isaac watched with obvious approval. "Coffee is already made," he said, gesturing to a large pot on the back of the stove. "That much I can manage without burning." She could not help but smile. Everyone has their strengths. Where do the men eat? Dining room through that door, or outside on the porch if the weather is nice? Mostly inside this time of year. He paused. "Thank you for this. I know you only just arrived, but having someone competent in the kitchen again feels like a miracle." Within 30 minutes, Hannah had breakfast ready, and Isaac called the ranch hands in from their morning chores. They filed into the dining room, 5 men of varying ages, all of them stopping short when they saw her. She served the food while Isaac made introductions. "This is Hannah Ashford, our new cook and housekeeper. She will be living here and managing the house from now on. I expect everyone to treat her with respect and give her whatever assistance she needs." His tone made it clear this was not a suggestion. The men nodded, offering polite greetings. There was Marcus, the oldest at perhaps 50, with a weathered face and kind eyes. Then came the 2 younger men, both in their 20s, named Samuel and Thomas. The fourth was barely 20, a Mexican man named Diego who had a quick smile. The last was closer to Isaac's age, somewhere in his early 30s, named Robert, who seemed to be the foreman based on how the others deferred to him. "Welcome, Miss Ashford," Robert said with a respectful nod. "It is good to have a proper cook again." "No offense, boss, but your scrambled eggs could be used as boot leather." The other men chuckled, and even Isaac smiled ruefully. "None taken. Eat up before it gets cold." They ate with the appetite of men who worked hard physically, complimenting the food between bites, and Hannah felt a warm glow of accomplishment. This was what she knew how to do, how to make herself useful and necessary. When they finished and headed back out to their work, they each thanked her, and she began cleaning up, already planning what to make for the midday meal. Isaac lingered in the kitchen after the others left. "That went well. They liked you." "They liked the food," Hannah corrected. "But I will prove myself with more than cooking. What else needs doing around the house?" He showed her through the rooms, pointing out what needed attention. Laundry piled up in a side room. Floors needed scrubbing. Windows had not been properly cleaned in months. Mending sat in a basket untouched. The list went on, and Hannah felt energized rather than overwhelmed. This was purpose, structure, a reason to exist. "I will work through it systematically," she assured him. "Within a week, everything will be in order. Take your time. I do not expect miracles overnight." He paused at the kitchen door. "Hannah, I want you to understand something. You are not a servant here. You are an employee, same as the ranch hands. You eat with us, not separately. You are free to come and go as you please on your time off. This is your home now, not just a place you work." "Understood," she nodded, touched by his words more than she could express. "Understood, and Isaac, thank you again for giving me this chance. You earned it by showing up and asking. That takes courage." He tipped his hat to her and headed outside, leaving her alone in the kitchen with more hope in her heart than she had felt since her father died. The days developed into a rhythm. Hannah woke early, prepared breakfast, cleaned the kitchen, and tackled the various household tasks throughout the day, stopping to prepare dinner and supper at the appropriate times. The work was constant but satisfying, and she found herself settling into the routine with relief. The ranch hands were polite and respectful, often helping her with tasks that required more strength, like hauling water or moving furniture for cleaning. Isaac proved to be a fair and considerate employer. He checked in with her regularly to ensure she had everything she needed, never asking for anything unreasonable, and genuinely seeming to appreciate her efforts. She began to notice small things about him, the way he always removed his hat when entering the house, how he spoke gently to the horses, the quiet authority he had with his men that came from respect rather than fear. He was probably 30 or 31, she guessed, with a seriousness about him that suggested he had shouldered responsibility young. 2 weeks after her arrival, Hannah was in the kitchen preparing supper when Isaac came in looking troubled. "We have a problem. I need to take Robert and Marcus into Madisonville tomorrow for supplies and to meet with the bank about expanding the herd. We will be gone overnight. I do not like leaving you here alone with just Samuel, Thomas, and Diego, but there is no help for it." "I will be fine," Hannah assured him. "They have all been perfect gentlemen. I have no concerns. Still, I would feel better if you kept the door to your room locked at night, just as a precaution." He met her eyes seriously. "Not because I do not trust them, but because I am responsible for your safety while you are under my roof." His protectiveness warmed her, though she tried not to read too much into it. "I will lock my door. Do not worry about me. Focus on your business." He nodded but still seemed reluctant. "If there is any trouble, any at all, Samuel knows to fire 3 shots in quick succession and I will come back immediately. We will be staying at the hotel in town, easy to reach." "Everything will be fine," she repeated, more firmly this time. "I can handle one night." The next morning, Isaac, Robert, and Marcus departed early, the wagon loaded with items to sell and a list of supplies to purchase. Hannah went about her usual routine, but the house felt emptier without Isaac's presence. She found herself listening for his footsteps, looking up when the door opened expecting to see him, then feeling foolish for it. He was her employer, nothing more, and she had no business feeling this strange sense of missing him after only 2 weeks. That evening, she prepared supper for the remaining men, and they ate outside on the porch, enjoying the pleasant weather. Samuel was talking about a horse he was training when they heard the sound of riders approaching fast. Everyone tensed, and Diego stood, his hand moving toward the rifle leaning against the wall. 4 men rode into the yard, rough-looking and heavily armed. Hannah's stomach clenched with fear as she recognized the type drifters, possibly outlaws, the kind who took what they wanted without asking. The leader, a man with a scarred face and mean eyes, looked around the yard with obvious interest. "Well, well, nice little setup you have got here. Where is the owner?" His gaze landed on Hannah and his smile made her skin crawl. "And who might this pretty thing be?" Samuel stepped forward, positioning himself between Hannah and the strangers. "The owner is away on business. We are just hands here. If you need something, state your business and move on." The scarred man laughed. "Brave words from a pup. We have been riding hard and need food, rest, maybe a little hospitality. Seems like you have plenty to share." "We have got nothing for you," Thomas said, moving to stand beside Samuel. "Best you ride on." The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. Diego had casually picked up the rifle, not pointing it at anyone but making it clear he was armed. Hannah's mind raced, trying to think of how to defuse the situation before violence erupted. "We can spare some food," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I will pack you supplies for the road and you can be on your way. No need for trouble. The scarred man's attention fixed on her again. Generous of you, sweetheart. Maybe we will take you up on that offer. Boys, dismount. Let us see what else this place has to offer. The four men began to dismount and Samuel shook his head. The lady offered you food. Take it and go. You are not welcome to stay. And who is going to make us leave? You three. The scarred man found this hilarious. I do not think so. Everything happened fast. The scarred man reached for his gun, and Diego raised the rifle, firing a shot over their heads in warning. The sound split the air, and the strangers' horses shied nervously. The other three men drew their weapons, and suddenly guns were pointed in every direction. Next shot will not be a warning, Diego said calmly, though Hannah could see the tension in his shoulders. Samuel had moved in front of Hannah, shielding her with his body, while Thomas positioned himself to her other side. She realized they were prepared to die protecting her, and the thought made her feel sick. This could not end in bloodshed, not because of her. Wait, she said loudly, stepping forward despite Samuel's attempt to keep her back. You want food and rest. We can provide that without this turning into a fight where people die. You can sleep in the barn tonight and I will bring you a good meal. In the morning, you take the supplies I pack and leave peacefully. Everyone walks away alive. Is that not better than shooting each other? The scarred man considered this, his gun still drawn but no longer pointing directly at anyone. What is to stop us from just taking what we want? Because if shooting starts, some of you will die too, Hannah said bluntly. Is a meal worth your life? We are offering you hospitality. Accept it gracefully and move on. A long moment passed where the outcome could have gone either way. Then the scarred man lowered his gun and his companions followed suit. All right. We accept your generous offer. The barn for tonight, food brought to us, and we leave at dawn. But any tricks and the deal is off. No tricks, Hannah agreed. Put your horses in the barn and settle in. I will bring food within the hour. The four men rode toward the barn, and as soon as they were out of immediate earshot, Samuel turned to her. That was incredibly dangerous. What if they had started shooting? They were going to shoot anyway if we did not give them a reason not to, Hannah said, her hands shaking now that the immediate danger had passed. This way, maybe we all survive the night. I should fire the signal shots, bring the boss back, Diego said, still gripping the rifle. No, we can handle this. They agreed to leave at dawn. If we panic and call Isaac back, it might provoke them into acting before he arrives, and people would definitely die then. Hannah took a deep breath. We just need to get through one night. Thomas looked doubtful. I do not trust them to keep their word. Neither do I, Hannah admitted. So we will take precautions. You three take turns on watch tonight, staying armed and alert. I will bring them food, but nothing that could be turned into weapons. We keep the house locked, and if they make any move toward it, then we fire the signal shots. Agreed. The three men exchanged glances and nodded. It was not a perfect plan, but it was better than an immediate shootout. Hannah went inside and prepared a substantial meal: bread, beans, salt pork, coffee, and carried it out to the barn in a large basket. Samuel insisted on accompanying her, his hand on his pistol. The four men had settled into the barn, making themselves comfortable in the hay. The scarred man stood as Hannah entered. That was smart thinking out there. Most women would have just screamed. Screaming does not solve problems, Hannah said, setting down the basket. Here is your meal. There is a pump outside for water. The outhouse is behind the barn. Please do not come to the main house for any reason. If you need something, call out and one of the men will assist you. He nodded slowly. You have got spirit. I like that. What is your name? That is not your concern. Eat, rest, and be gone at dawn as agreed. She turned and walked out, Samuel close behind her, every muscle in her body tense until they were back at the house with the door locked behind them. The night passed with agonizing slowness. Hannah stayed in the kitchen, unable to sleep, making sure coffee was always hot for the men taking watch. Samuel took the first shift, then Thomas, then Diego, each of them stationed where they could see the barn and the house. Every small sound made Hannah jump, but the strangers kept to their word and stayed in the barn. Dawn finally broke, soft pink light spreading across the sky. Hannah had packed a generous supply of food and basic supplies, partly because she had promised and partly because she wanted to give them no excuse to linger or return. When she brought the package out, the 4 men were already saddling their horses. The scarred man took the supplies with a nod that might have been respect. "You kept your word. We will keep ours. Thank you for the hospitality, even if it was forced. Just go," Hannah said tiredly, "and please do not come back." He actually smiled at that, a genuine expression that made him look less threatening. "No promises, but probably not. You have got loyal hands here. That means something." He mounted his horse and the 4 of them rode out, heading south, not looking back. Hannah sagged with relief and Samuel caught her arm to steady her. "You did good, Miss Ashford, real good. That could have ended much worse." "Let us just hope they keep riding," she said, watching the 4 figures disappear into the distance. Isaac, Robert, and Marcus returned late that afternoon, the wagon loaded with supplies. Isaac jumped down before the wagon even fully stopped, striding toward the house with obvious urgency. Samuel said there was trouble. What happened? Hannah and the 3 ranch hands filled him in on the events, and she watched Isaac's expression grow darker with each detail. When they finished, he turned to her. "You put yourself at risk. You should have fired the signal shots immediately and started a gunfight that would have gotten people killed before you arrived." Hannah shook her head. "I did what I thought was best to keep everyone safe. By offering yourself as a hostage negotiator." His voice rose slightly. "Hannah, those men could have done anything. You cannot take risks like that." "I took the risk I thought was necessary," she said, meeting his anger with her own rising frustration. "I am not helpless, Isaac. I can think and act in a crisis. Would you rather I had hidden in my room while your men got shot defending me?" They stood facing each other, both breathing hard, the tension thick between them. The other men had wisely retreated, leaving them alone in the yard. Isaac ran a hand through his hair, his anger giving way to something else fierce, she realized. He had been frightened for her. "I am responsible for your safety," he said, his voice dropping. "If something had happened to you because I was not here to protect you, I would never have forgiven myself." The intensity in his words caught her off guard. "Nothing happened. Everyone is safe. That is what matters." He stepped closer, his gray eyes searching her face. "You matter. Do not dismiss that so easily." The words hung between them, weighted with meaning that went beyond employer and employee, and Hannah's heart began to beat faster. "Isaac," she started, not sure what she wanted to say. "I know. You work for me. It is inappropriate. I should not have said that." He took a step back, re-establishing the professional distance. "I apologize. Thank you for handling the situation as well as you did. The men said you were brave and smart, and I trust their judgment, even if I wish you had not been in danger in the first place." He walked away before she could respond, heading to the barn to help unload the wagon. Hannah stood in the yard, her emotions in turmoil. Something had shifted between them in that moment, something she was not sure how to navigate. She cared about him more than was wise, more than was appropriate given their circumstances. But hearing him express concern that went beyond mere duty had cracked open something in her chest that she had been trying to keep carefully sealed. The next few days passed with an awkwardness that had not existed before. Isaac was polite but distant, and Hannah threw herself into her work, trying to ignore the way her heart jumped every time he entered a room. The other men noticed something had changed, but were wise enough not to comment on it. 4 days after the incident with the strangers, Hannah was working in the garden, harvesting vegetables for supper when Isaac found her. He stood at the garden's edge, watching her for a moment before speaking. "Can we talk?" His voice was quiet, almost hesitant. Hannah straightened, brushing dirt from her hands. "Of course." He seemed to struggle with his words, which was unlike him. Isaac was usually direct and certain. "I have been avoiding you, and that was cowardly of me. The truth is, what I said the other day was not inappropriate because of your position here. It was inappropriate because we have only known each other a few weeks, and you might not welcome such feelings from me or anyone else. But I have never been good at pretending, so I am going to be honest with you." Hannah's heart was racing now, her hands gripping the basket of vegetables tightly. "I care about you," Isaac continued, "more than I should after such a short time, more than is probably sensible. When Samuel told me there had been trouble, and you had been in potential danger, I felt something I have not felt in years: genuine fear of loss. I thought about what it would mean if something happened to you, and I realized that you have become important to me in ways that go beyond having a good cook." He took a breath, meeting her eyes directly. "I am not asking you to feel the same way. I just needed to be honest about where I stand. If it makes you uncomfortable, I will do my best to keep things purely professional. But if there is any chance you might feel something similar, I would like permission to court you properly, to see if what I think is growing between us is real." Hannah set down the basket, her hands trembling slightly. "You are right that it has only been a few weeks, but I would be lying if I said I had not noticed you, had not felt something when we talk, when you check on me, when you smile at something I have done well. I think about you more than I should. I look for you when you are not around. I do not know if that is just gratitude for rescuing me from a terrible situation, or if it is something more, but I would like to find out." The relief that washed over Isaac's face was unmistakable. "So I can court you?" "Properly, you can court me," Hannah agreed, feeling a smile spread across her face despite her nervousness. "Though I am not entirely sure what that looks like when we live in the same house and see each other constantly." He laughed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "We will figure it out. Maybe I could take you into Madisonville sometime, show you the town properly. We could have dinner at the hotel, walk around without chores waiting. Would you like that?" "I would like that very much." They stood there smiling at each other like fools, until Hannah remembered the vegetables needed to be brought in for supper. Isaac insisted on helping, carrying the heavy basket while she gathered the last few items, and they walked back to the house together, something new and fragile beginning between them. True to his word, Isaac began courting her. It was different from any courtship Hannah had heard about, given their living situation, but it worked for them. He made a point of spending time with her beyond meals, sitting in the kitchen while she cooked, talking about everything and nothing. He brought her small gifts when he went to town: a new ribbon, a book of poetry, fresh lemons which were expensive and hard to get. They took evening walks around the ranch, discussing their pasts, their hopes, the small details of their lives. Hannah learned that Isaac had inherited the ranch from his father, who died when Isaac was 25. He had been running it for 6 years, building it from a modest operation into something substantial through hard work and smart decisions. His mother had died of illness, and he had no siblings, which made the ranch both his legacy and his loneliness. "That is why I understood when you showed up with nothing," he told her one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. I know what it is like to lose everyone and have to figure out how to keep going. Though at least I had the ranch. You had nothing at all, yet you kept fighting. That is remarkable." "I did not have a choice," Hannah said. "It was fight or give up and die. Fighting seemed preferable. Still, many people would have given up. You did not." He reached over and took her hand, the first time he had done so, and the warmth of his touch sent tingles up her arm. "I admire your strength." She squeezed his hand in response, feeling the calluses from hard work, the solid reality of him beside her. "I admire what you have built here. This ranch, the loyalty of your men, the way you treat everyone with respect. You are a good man, Isaac Hendricks." "I try to be," he said quietly. "My father taught me that how you treat people when you have power over them shows your true character. I have always tried to remember that." As weeks turned into months, their relationship deepened naturally, growing from attraction into something more substantial. Hannah felt herself falling in love, truly in love, for the first time in her life. Isaac was everything she had not known. She wanted: steady, kind, honest, hardworking, but also capable of humor and tenderness. He made her laugh, made her think, made her feel valued for more than just the work she did. The ranch hands noticed, of course, but they seemed pleased rather than disapproving. Robert told her one day while she was hanging laundry that he had never seen Isaac so happy, and that she was good for him. "He needed someone to care about, something beyond just the ranch," Robert said. "You have given him that." In August, Isaac took her into Madisonville for the day he had promised months ago. The town was larger than she expected, a real settlement with a main street, shops, a church, a school, and a hotel. They had dinner at the hotel restaurant, a luxury Hannah had not experienced in years, and walked through the town afterward, Isaac pointing out various establishments and introducing her to people he knew. "Everyone will know about us by tomorrow," Hannah said, amused by how many people had stopped to chat and eye her with open curiosity. "Let them know," Isaac said, his hand resting lightly on her lower back as they walked. "I am not trying to hide you. I want everyone to know that you are important to me." They stopped by the general store, and Isaac insisted on buying her a new dress, a beautiful dark green one that actually fit her properly, unlike the borrowed clothes she had been wearing. She protested the expense, but he waved her off. "You work harder than anyone I know, and you deserve nice things. Let me do this." On the ride home in the wagon, with the new dress wrapped carefully beside her, Hannah felt a contentment she had not known was possible. She looked over at Isaac handling the reins, his profile strong against the setting sun, and knew with certainty that she loved him. The question was when to tell him, and whether he felt the same depth of emotion. As if sensing her thoughts, he glanced over and smiled. "What are you thinking about?" "You have that serious look you get when you are planning something complicated." "I was thinking that I am happy," she said honestly. "Truly happy for the first time in a very long time." His smile widened. "Good. That is exactly what I hoped to hear." He paused, then added, "Hannah, I need to tell you something, and I cannot wait any longer to say it. I love you. I think I have loved you since you stood in my doorway soaking wet and demanded work with your chin up and fire in your eyes, refusing to beg despite how desperate you were. But I definitely knew I loved you the night you faced down 4 armed men to protect my ranch hands, and I realized I wanted to spend the rest of my life with someone that brave and smart and beautiful." Hannah felt tears prick her eyes. "I love you too. I have been trying to figure out when it happened, but I think it was gradual, a little more each day until suddenly I could not imagine my life without you in it." Isaac pulled the wagon to a stop right there in the middle of the road and turned to her, cupping her face in his hands. "May I kiss you, please?" she whispered. And then his lips were on hers, gentle and sweet and full of promise. It was not her first kiss ever, but it was the first one that meant everything, that felt like coming home and starting an adventure simultaneously. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "We should probably get home before it gets dark," Isaac said, but he did not sound like he cared much about practical concerns at the moment. "Probably," Hannah agreed, equally unconcerned. They made it back to the ranch just as the last light was fading. The ranch hands took one look at them and grinned, clearly guessing what had transpired. Diego whooped and congratulated them, while Marcus shook Isaac's hand with a knowing smile. It felt right, Hannah thought, to be surrounded by people who cared about them and were genuinely happy for their relationship. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Hannah lay awake thinking about the future. She and Isaac had not discussed marriage explicitly, but it seemed like the natural direction they were heading. The thought did not frighten her as she might have expected. Instead, it filled her with anticipation and joy. 2 weeks later, Isaac asked her to go for a walk after supper. They headed toward the pasture where some of the horses grazed, the evening air warm and pleasant. He seemed nervous, which was unusual for him, and Hannah felt her own nerves beginning to flutter in response. "I have been thinking about timing," Isaac said as they walked. "About how long people are supposed to court before taking the next step, what is considered proper and appropriate. And the truth is, by conventional standards, we have not been courting long enough. But nothing about our situation has been conventional from the start." He stopped walking and turned to face her, taking both of her hands in his. "Hannah, I know what I want. I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. I want to build this ranch together, make decisions together, face whatever comes together. I want children with you someday, if we are blessed with them. I want to grow old with you. I do not want to wait years to start that life when I already know you are who I want." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring, simple gold with a small stone. "This was my mother's. She would have loved you, I think, for your strength and kindness. Will you marry me, Hannah? Will you be my wife, not just in the practical sense of the partnership we already have, but in the real, committed, forever sense?" Hannah felt tears streaming down her face, but they were happy tears. "Yes, absolutely yes. I want all of those things too, Isaac. I want to build a life with you." He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit as if it had been made for her. Then he pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, and she felt safe and loved and home in a way she had never experienced before. When he kissed her this time, it was deeper, more passionate, full of the promise of their future together. They were married in September in the church in Madisonville, with the ranch hands serving as witnesses and half the town attending out of curiosity and genuine goodwill. Hannah wore the green dress Isaac had bought her, altered slightly by her own hand to be more suitable for a wedding, and carried wildflowers that Diego had picked that morning. Isaac wore his best suit and looked more handsome than should be legal, his gray eyes shining with happiness as she walked down the aisle toward him. The ceremony was simple but meaningful, traditional vows spoken with full hearts. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac kissed her in front of everyone, not caring who saw, and Hannah laughed against his lips, giddy with joy. The town women had organized a reception at the hotel, with food and music and dancing, and Hannah found herself swept into the celebration, welcomed by the community as Isaac's wife. "You have made quite an impression," an older woman named Mrs. Patterson told her during the reception. "We heard about how you faced down those outlaws to protect the ranch. That took real courage. You are going to fit in just fine here, Mrs. Hendricks. Mrs. Hendricks." Hannah liked the sound of that more than she could express. She found Isaac in the crowd and made her way to him, sliding her hand into his. He pulled her close, his arm around her waist, and they stood together watching their friends and neighbors celebrate with them. "Ready to go home," he murmured in her ear after a few hours. "Very ready," she said, and they slipped away, climbing into the wagon for the ride back to the ranch. Their ranch now, Hannah thought. Their home. That night, alone in Isaac's room, which was now their shared room, they came together as husband and wife. And Hannah discovered that physical love could be as beautiful and meaningful as emotional love when shared with the right person. Isaac was gentle and patient, making sure she felt safe and cherished, and the intimacy they shared cemented the bond between them in a way that felt sacred. Afterward, lying in his arms with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, Hannah thought about the journey that had brought her here. 6 months ago, she had been starving and desperate, with no hope and no future. Now she was married to a man she loved deeply, living in a real home, part of a community with a future stretching bright before her. "What are you thinking?" Isaac asked, his hand stroking her hair gently. "That I am grateful. For the rain that day, for your kindness, for every step that led me here to you." She tilted her head to look up at him. "I never imagined I could be this happy." "Neither did I," he admitted. "I thought I would run this ranch alone, maybe eventually marry someone suitable out of practicality. I never expected to fall completely in love with a woman who showed up on my doorstep demanding work." He smiled. "Best thing that ever happened to me." "Best thing that ever happened to me too," Hannah said, and kissed him again, feeling blessed beyond measure. The years that followed were not without challenges, but they faced them together. The ranch prospered under their joint management, Hannah handling the domestic side and accounts while Isaac managed the cattle and land. They became known in the area as fair employers and good neighbors, always willing to help others in need. In their second year of marriage, Hannah discovered she was pregnant. The news filled them both with joy and some anxiety, but mostly joy. She continued working as long as she was able, though Isaac fussed over her constantly, worried about her overdoing things. The ranch hands were equally protective, refusing to let her lift anything heavy or work too hard. "I am pregnant, not dying," Hannah protested one day when Marcus took a basket of laundry from her hands. "I can still do my job." "Let us help," Marcus said kindly. "We want to. You take care of all of us all the time. Let us take care of you for once." In March of 1879, Hannah gave birth to a son they named Jacob. He had Isaac's dark hair and Hannah's blue eyes, and both parents were instantly smitten. Isaac was a natural father, gentle and attentive, and Hannah fell in love with him all over again watching him with their son. "I cannot believe we made this," Isaac said one night, holding the sleeping baby carefully. "He is perfect." "He is pretty wonderful," Hannah agreed, exhausted but happy. "Though I could do without the sleepless nights. You rest." "I will handle the night shift tonight," Isaac said, and refused to take no for an answer. He was true to his word, letting her sleep while he cared for Jacob, and Hannah woke feeling more refreshed than she had in days. Life settled into a new rhythm with the baby. The ranch hands doted on Jacob shamelessly, taking turns entertaining him when Hannah needed to work. Diego taught him Spanish words before he could barely talk. Thomas carved him wooden toys. Samuel told him stories. Marcus bounced him when he was fussy. Robert declared himself the unofficial godfather and took the responsibility seriously. When Jacob was 2, Hannah became pregnant again, and their daughter was born in the spring of 1881. They named her Rose, and she had her father's gray eyes and her mother's blonde hair. If Jacob had made them a family, Rose completed it, and Isaac declared himself the luckiest man in Montana Territory. 2 healthy children, a thriving ranch, and a wife I love more every day," he said one evening as they sat on the porch watching Jacob play in the yard while Rose napped inside. "What more could a man ask for?" "Nothing," Hannah agreed, leaning against his shoulder. "This is everything I ever wanted, even when I did not know I wanted it." "Remember that day you showed up in the rain, soaking wet and half-starved," Isaac said, his arm around her. "I almost sent you away. I was not sure I wanted a stranger living in my house, but something made me let you in, thank God." "The best decision you ever made," Hannah teased. "Definitely the best decision I ever made," he agreed seriously. "You have given me everything, Hannah. A real home, not just a house. Children. Love. Purpose beyond just work. I hope you know how much you mean to me." She turned to kiss him softly. "I know. And you have given me just as much. You gave me a home when I had nothing. You gave me a chance when I was desperate. You gave me love when I thought I would never find it. We saved each other, I think." "We definitely saved each other," Isaac agreed. The years continued to pass in a blur of ordinary moments that made up a beautiful life. Jacob grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved the horses and followed his father everywhere. Rose was bright and energetic, constantly getting into mischief and charming everyone with her smile. The ranch continued to prosper, allowing them to expand and hire more help. In 1883, Hannah gave birth to another son whom they named William. He was a surprise, as they had thought their family was complete, but a welcome one. Diego joked that they were trying to populate the entire ranch with little Hendricks, and Hannah laughed, not denying it. "3 is a good number," Isaac said, holding William while Jacob and Rose clamored for attention. "We are officially outnumbered, but I am okay with that. Life was busy and often chaotic, but it was good." Hannah had never imagined she could have all of this: a husband who loved her completely, children who filled her days with purpose and joy, a home that was truly hers, work that mattered, a community that accepted her. Some nights, she lay in bed marveling at how different her life was from what it might have been if Isaac had turned her away that rainy day. When Jacob was 10, he started helping with the ranch work in earnest, learning everything Isaac could teach him about managing cattle and land. Rose was 7 and already showed signs of her mother's organizational skills, helping Hannah keep the household running smoothly. William was 5 and mostly caused trouble, but adorable trouble that was hard to stay mad at. "We are raising good children," Hannah said to Isaac one night after they had finally gotten all 3 kids to bed. "They are kind and hardworking and smart." "They are like their mother," Isaac said, pulling her close. "You have done an incredible job raising them, especially given how much you also do around here." "We have done an incredible job," Hannah corrected. "You are as much a part of their upbringing as I am. You are a wonderful father, Isaac." He kissed her forehead. "I try. I want them to grow up knowing they are loved and valued, that they can build whatever life they want. I want them to have the security and opportunity we did not always have." "They will," Hannah assured him. "We are giving them that." As the 1880s progressed, Montana territory changed around them, growing more settled and civilized. The wild days were fading, though not entirely gone. The ranch continued to thrive, and Isaac made wise investments that ensured their children's futures would be secure. They added onto the house, giving each child their own room and creating a larger space for their growing family. In 1887, Hannah's oldest son Jacob turned 11, and she realized with some shock that she had been at the ranch, had been married to Isaac, for 10 years. A decade had passed since that desperate day when she arrived with nothing. How much had changed in that time? How much she had changed? "What are you thinking about?" Isaac asked, coming up behind her in the kitchen and wrapping his arms around her waist. Even after 10 years, the touch still made her heart flutter, about time, about how quickly it passes. She turned in his arms to face him. "It has been 10 years since I knocked on your door begging for work. And I told you to stay and I would give you a home," Isaac said softly. "I kept that promise." "You did. You gave me so much more than just a home, though. You gave me everything." She stretched up to kiss him. "I love you, Isaac, more now than even on our wedding day. I love you too, more than I have words to express." He held her close, his cheek resting on top of her head. "Here is to the next 10 years and the 10 after that, and all the years until we are old and gray. I will take every single one of them as long as they are with you," Hannah said. They stood there in the kitchen holding each other, surrounded by the sounds of their children playing outside and the ranch hands going about their work, in the home they had built together, and Hannah felt complete. This was what happiness looked like, not perfect or without struggles, but real and full and worth every hard step it took to get here. The children grew. Jacob became a capable rancher in his own right, working alongside his father and learning everything about the operation. Rose proved to have a head for figures and started helping with the ranch accounts, showing the same competence her mother had. William was still young but showed promise, eager to learn and full of energy. When Jacob turned 18 in 1886, he asked to take on more responsibility, and Isaac formally made him a partner in the ranch operations. "This will be yours someday," Isaac told his son. "You, Rose, and William together. I want you to be ready to run it, to continue building what your mother and I started." "I will make you proud," Jacob promised, and Isaac knew he would. His children were good people, raised right, prepared for the future. In 1891, Rose at 17 became engaged to a young man from town, a schoolteacher named David Morrison, who was kind and educated and treated her with respect. Isaac approved, though he joked that no man would ever be good enough for his daughter. The wedding was planned for the following spring. "Our babies are growing up," Hannah said to Isaac one night. "Soon they will have their own families, their own lives. They will always be our babies," Isaac said. "But yes, they are adults now, making their own way. We did well, Hannah. They are prepared for whatever comes." "We did do well," she agreed. "I just wish it did not go so fast. Time is strange that way. The days are long, but the years are short." He pulled her against him, as comfortable with each other after 15 years of marriage as they had been in the early days, maybe more so. "But I would not change a single moment." Rose's wedding in the spring of 1892 was a grand affair, with the whole community turning out to celebrate. Hannah cried watching her daughter walk down the aisle, beautiful in white lace, and Isaac held her hand tightly, his own eyes suspiciously bright. Their little girl was starting her own life, and while it was bittersweet, it was also right and good. "She is happy," Isaac whispered to Hannah during the reception. "That is what matters." "She is," Hannah agreed, watching Rose dance with her new husband, radiant with joy. "We raised her right. She knows her own mind and chose well." Jacob met a girl that same year, a rancher's daughter from a neighboring property. Her name was Elizabeth, and she was smart, capable, and perfect for him. They courted properly for a year before Jacob asked Isaac for permission to marry her, which Isaac gave gladly. Another wedding followed in 1893, and suddenly, their house felt emptier with both older children married and starting their own homes. William was still with them, though, now 14 and full of opinions and energy. He kept them on their toes, and Hannah was grateful that at least one of their children was still young enough to need them daily. But even William was growing up, becoming his own person, preparing for his own future. "Soon it will just be the two of us again," Hannah said to Isaac one quiet evening, "like the early days." "I am looking forward to it," Isaac admitted. I love our children, but I also love having time alone with you. We will get to be just us again, at least until the grandchildren start arriving. Grandchildren. The thought made Hannah feel old and young simultaneously. But sure enough, in 1894, Rose gave birth to a daughter, making Hannah and Isaac grandparents for the first time. The baby was named Hannah Rose after both her grandmother and mother, and holding her tiny granddaughter, Hannah felt the circle of life complete itself in a beautiful way. Jacob and Elizabeth had their first child in 1895, a son they named Isaac Jacob, and Hannah watched her husband hold his namesake grandson with tears in his eyes. "This is legacy," Isaac said quietly. "This is what we built. Not just the ranch, but this family, love, continuity." "Yes," Hannah agreed, her own heart full. "This is everything." William showed no signs of settling down, still young and restless at 16, but there was time for that. Hannah was content to let him find his own way as his siblings had. She and Isaac were still actively running the ranch, though Jacob was increasingly taking on more responsibility, preparing to eventually assume full control. The turn of the century approached, bringing with it changes and progress. Montana had achieved statehood in 1889, and the wild territory of Hannah's arrival was now a settled state with laws and order. Madisonville had grown into a proper town with a railroad connection, more shops, and a real school. The world was modernizing, though the ranch maintained its connection to the old ways, to the land and the work that had always defined it. In 1900, Isaac turned 54, and Hannah was 45. They had been married 23 years, and together they had built something remarkable. 3 children, all doing well, grandchildren who brought joy, a thriving ranch that employed dozens of people, a home that welcomed all who came with honest intentions. "You ever think about that day you arrived?" Isaac asked her on their anniversary that year. They were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, a ritual they had maintained through all the years. "About how close you came to just passing by. If I had said no, if I had sent you away, sometimes," Hannah admitted. "It frightens me to think about. Where would I have gone? What would have happened to me?" She squeezed his hand. "Thank God you let me in. Thank God you saw something in me worth keeping." "I saw everything in you," Isaac said seriously. "Strength, courage, determination, kindness, intelligence. How could I have sent you away? You were everything I did not know I needed. And you were the answer to a prayer I did not know I was praying," Hannah said. "You saved my life that day, Isaac. You gave me a home just like you promised. But more than that, you gave me a life worth living, love worth cherishing, a family to belong to. I will spend every day I have left grateful for that." He turned to kiss her, and even after all these years, the touch still sparked something deep inside her. They had grown older together, silver threading through their hair, lines marking their faces, but the love between them had only deepened with time. They knew each other completely now, the good and the difficult, the strengths and the weaknesses, and loved each other not in spite of but because of all of it. "Here is to the next 23 years, Isaac said, raising an imaginary glass. "And whatever comes after that." "To us," Hannah agreed. "Always to us." William eventually married at 22, choosing a spirited young woman named Catherine who reminded everyone of Hannah in her youth. The wedding was in 1903, and Hannah cried again, this time because her baby was leaving the nest, the last of her children to start his own life. But she was also happy, because Catherine was perfect for William, grounding his restlessness while matching his energy. With all 3 children married and starting their own families, Hannah and Isaac entered a new phase of their lives. They were still active on the ranch, but increasingly they passed responsibility to the next generation. Jacob ran most of the day-to-day operations now, with Isaac serving more as an advisor than a manager. It was the right transition, allowing the younger generation to put their own stamp on things while benefiting from accumulated wisdom. Hannah spent more time with her grandchildren, now numbering 5 with more on the way. She taught them to cook and garden, told them stories about the early days of the ranch, and loved them fiercely. Isaac built them toys and taught them to ride and passed on the values that had guided his own life. "We are the old generation now," Hannah said to Isaac one day, watching their grandchildren play in the yard. "When did that happen?" "Gradually, then all at once," Isaac said with a smile. "But I do not mind. We have earned the right to be grandparents, to watch the next generation take over while we enjoy the fruits of our labor." "You are right," Hannah agreed. "It is rather nice, actually. All the joy of children without all the exhausting work." They laughed together, comfortable in this new stage of life, grateful for what they had built and excited to see where their children and grandchildren would take it. As the years continued to pass, Hannah and Isaac grew older but remained active and engaged. They celebrated their 30th anniversary in 1907, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, ranch hands both old and new, and friends from throughout the area. It was a joyous celebration of a life well lived and a love that had endured through decades. 30 years, Isaac said during the party, his arm around Hannah's waist. "Best 30 years of my life." "Mine too," Hannah said, kissing his cheek. "Here is to 30 more." They did not get quite 30 more, but they got another 20 good years. In 1927, at the age of 81, Isaac passed away peacefully in his sleep, with Hannah beside him as she had been for 50 years. The loss devastated her, but she was also grateful that they had been given so much time together, that he had not suffered, that he had been surrounded by love to the very end. At the funeral, attended by what seemed like half the state, Jacob gave the eulogy. He spoke of his father's integrity, his kindness, his wisdom, and his absolute devotion to family. "Everything good in my life traces back to the example my father set," Jacob said, his voice thick with emotion. "He showed me how to be a man, a husband, a father, a leader. He and my mother built something extraordinary together, and their legacy will continue through all of us here today." Hannah sat in the front pew surrounded by her children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren, and felt the weight of loss but also the comfort of community. Isaac was gone, but everything he had built remained. Their love remained, immortalized in the family they had created together. She lived another 5 years after Isaac's death, remaining sharp and active until the very end. She spent those years doting on her ever-growing family, now numbering more than 30 descendants. She wrote down stories from her life so future generations would know where they came from. She worked in her garden and helped in the kitchen when her daughter-in-law protested, still needing to be useful. When Hannah Hendricks passed away in 1932 at the age of 77, it was said that half the state mourned. She had become a legend in her own time, the woman who had arrived with nothing and helped build one of the most successful ranches in Montana, who had raised fine children and created a legacy of love and hard work that touched countless lives. She was buried beside Isaac on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a sky so big it seemed to go on forever. At her funeral, her granddaughter Hannah Rose, now a mother herself, spoke of her grandmother's courage and strength. "She taught us that where you start does not matter as much as what you do with the opportunities you are given. She arrived at this ranch desperate and alone, and my grandfather gave her a chance. Together, they built something that will last for generations. That is the true measure of a life well lived." Years later, the ranch still stood, now run by Jacob's children and grandchildren. In the main house, still lovingly maintained, hung a portrait of Isaac and Hannah painted for their 40th anniversary. It showed them as they had been in middle age, still strong and vital, looking at each other with obvious love. Beneath it was a small plaque that read, Isaac and Hannah Hendricks, founders of Hendricks Ranch. He gave her a home. She gave him everything. Together they built a legacy of love that endures. And in the family room, framed and preserved, was the simple statement that had started it all, handwritten by Isaac himself years earlier. She begged for work at the ranch. The cowboy said, "Stay, and I will give you a home." And they built a life together that proved love could be found in the most unexpected places, at the most desperate times, when two people were brave enough to take a chance on each other. The story of Isaac and Hannah Hendricks became part of Montana history, told to children and grandchildren as an example of what could be achieved with courage, hard work, and love. The ranch they built together continued to thrive for more than a century, a testament to the foundation they had laid. And though both of them had been gone for many years, their love story remained alive in the hearts of all who knew it. A reminder that sometimes the most beautiful journeys begin with a single desperate knock on a door, and one person compassionate enough to answer it with kindness instead of dismissal. Their story was proof that home was not just a place but a person, and that love could transform desperation into hope, loneliness into belonging, and two separate lives into one extraordinary shared journey.